Rev up your engines!
Jose Gonzalez says, Scotty is tapping the bong. I haven't tapped the bong since I went to college in the 1970s. I grew out of that, you know. I mean, it was fun and it's time. But it's like anything else. You know, if you do something over and over again, it's boring. It's not that interesting. I mean, if you're an alcoholic and you drink all the time, it's depressing. And it doesn't affect you all that much because you have a high tolerance for it. My brother was an alcoholic. He didn't enjoy it. He just drank to try to get to be normal, right? If you do something all the time, it really isn't that interesting. Aside from two things, food and something else. I'll let you use your imagination on that. Freddie Lago says, Scotty, how do you feel about Honda turbocharged engines? Well, you know, they've been turbocharged them a long time. They started in their Acuras, but I mean, it's the same company. Honda Acura's just the fancy Hondas, right? And they do make very good engines. And generally, their turbocharged engines stay in pretty good shape. Except when they made those 1.5 liter turbocharged DEI engines. The gasoline direct injections in those and the turbochargers make so much extra pressure that they got oil dilution and the engines got damaged from raw gasoline mixing with the oil, which ruins the timing chain, ruins the bearings, wears the engine pistons, the cylinders out faster. So that's not a good thing. Vaughn Ron says, I'm thinking about buying a V8 2013 Toyota Tundra with 131,000 miles. Thoughts? Well, my grandson bought a 2012 with 195,000 miles on it for $7,500. He loves it. Truck. He's going to keep it. If it ever does wear the engine out, he'll put another engine in it. We found a really nice rebuild engine from a guy who rebuilds racing engines, and he only wanted $7,000 for the thing. He's only got like $220 on it now. Who knows, it might last 4 or 5 before you got to rebuild it. They're so well made. They're really great vehicles. Just don't overpay. Everybody wants a ton of money now. It's 9 years old, so see what kind of a deal you can get. German Chavez says, Scotty, I got an 01 Pontiac Sunfire. The engine sounds normal until I run the AC and then it doesn't sound right. If your compressor's wearing out and you turn it on, it starts rattling. Go under the hood, get a screwdriver, a little cheap pair of mechanic stethoscope you can get at AutoZone or something for like $10. Put it on a compressor. The compressor's making noise. It's wearing out. Change it sooner than later. Don't use it because if you do and then it blows up, it will send pieces of metal inside the AC system and destroy it. As it stands now, if it's noisy, it's wearing, but you could just replace the compressor and the dryer and the expansion valve and not have to replace the whole system as pieces of metal get shot through. But on the other hand, if it's not the compressor that makes noise, but your car runs odd then, it doesn't sound right, then you got something wrong with the car. Could be an electrical problem. AC uses a lot of power. Could be the alternator, the battery needs to be tested. Could be a lot of things. But start by listening to the compressor first. Individual 1 says, I'm thinking of selling my 2018 Jetta. It seems I get as much now as when I bought it new in 17. Yes, sell it. Definitely, if you can sell it. Those are money pits as they age. They have horrendous resale value, but now with these prices all over the place, yes, go and sell it, get good money, get yourself a Toyota or Honda. You'll be much happier in the long run. Randy Ramirez says, what brand of car battery is your favorite brand? Well, the one that lasts the longest. I'll tell you, truthfully, from my experience, I just buy them at AutoZone. They're relatively expensive, but they seem to last the longest. The problem with batteries are they're making them cheaper. When I was a kid, you could get 5, 6, 7, 8 years out of a battery. Sometimes now they last 3, 4, and that's it if you're lucky. I used to like the Delco, but then they started making them in South Korea, and by the time they shipped them here, they were already half shot from sitting in a boat full of acid and not doing anything. Batteries are made to be used. You want one that's a month or less old. If it's been sitting on a shelf for 6 months, it's physically degrading and it's lost probably 40, 50% or more of its lifespan. So you got to get them fresh. And AutoZone sell an awful lot of batteries, so you get a fresh battery. You go to some big chain store, they might have a mountain of batteries been sitting there for 6 months or a year. Hey, you buy one of those old batteries, won't last that long. Joey Chang says, when I downshift from 6 to 5th, it crunches, it speeds above 50, but not when upshifting. Is that bad? Synchros? Yeah, for sure. The synchros let you shift from gear to gear. And synchros are used the most when you downshift. Like when I was a young mechanic, a lot of standard transmissions did not have a synchroed first gear. So you could only put it in first gear when the car was stopped. If you tried to go from second to first while it was rolling, they'd crunch because they didn't have synchro. Well, your car has a synchro, I'm sure, but it's wearing out, and that's what's happening inside. Just baby it. Slunky says, I got an 02 F-150, 5.4 liter V8. It gets the CHT over temp code and enters limbo when I idle. I change the coolant, serpentine belt, water pump, thermostat, reader. What else could it be? First, you want to see, is it really getting too hot? On those, a lot of times, it's an old vehicle. It's V8. It could be your catalytic converter. It's clogging up. If it clogs up, the engine overheats. It's just like sticking potatoes in the exhaust. If the engine can't breathe the exhaust out, that's hot air, right? The hot air backs up into the engine, makes it run even hotter, and the engine will overheat and it'll run crappy. Easy to check. Any mechanic, or if you want to buy one yourself, they're not that expensive, you can take out the front oxygen sensor, put a gauge on it. Should have almost no back pressure before the catalytic converter. You take the oxygen sensor off, the one that's before the catalytic converter. If it's got 0 or 1 psi back pressure, there's no problem. If it's got 3, 4, 5, I've even seen them with 15 pounds pressure, that means the catalytic converter's clogged up and it needs replacing. Could easily be that. James Rugis says, Scotty, I got problems with my AC compressor. It turns, but no cold air comes out. First thing you want to do is put a set of gauges on it. If it's turning, you see the pressures. And if the pressures don't change, or if they're 0 because there's nothing in it, or if they're not about 30, 35 on the low side, and maybe 200 on the high side when it's idling, then you got some kind of a problem. Now, if those are the pressures, and it still doesn't blow cold, that generally means you have a problem inside the dash with the computer controls. Okay, you got a Chevy Suburban. On those, a lot of times the control unit on the dash that turns the AC and the heat on, those break all the time. And then you won't get any air conditioning until you replace that, because it won't open and close the little doors to let the air go into the AC evaporator and make it cold. They have nothing but actuator problems and control units on GM products. They're not made that well. Hey, Wright says, I got a knocking, but it goes away when my car's warm, and there's no knocking when the engine is under load once it's warmed up. Is it oil starved in the VVT with oil treatment stuff you mentioned help? Yes, it could. That automatic test solution oil treatment, it could work. What happens is your timing chain is pushed in by a timing chain tensioner, and it's a rod that goes in and out. It's pushed in by oil pressure, and as it carbons up from age and gunk, it takes a little while for it to warm up before it pops in. Try that cleaner, and it gets it smooth and shiny again. I just did a RAV4 like that. Stop the noise entirely for the guy. So, hey, give it a try. It's worth it. Hello there says, can I change one leaf in a leaf spring, or do I have to change the whole thing? It's theoretical that you can change one, but generally they're old and rusty. It'll all break when you try to take them apart. Most guys will just buy the whole set and replace it. Or if they're going used, they buy a whole assembly used and then take the old one off and bolt the new one on. A lot of guys will put coilovers to give them a little bit extra spring, and it'll ride better. Luciano says, Scotty, do you have any scan tools that can scan older Japanese cars from 2000 up? I bought the Blue Driver, but it doesn't work on a Japanese car with the JOBD protocol. I'm in Trinidad. Try a Nova. This is a Nova. They make pretty good scan tools. The only thing is, I don't know what you guys are using in Jamaica. If you're using North American protocol, that'll work. If it's some other Asian, European one, it won't work. You got to know where the car came from. The protocols are different all over the world, so it's kind of sad, but that's the way it goes. If you don't know where the car's from, you got to find out first and then buy it for that area. But a lot of times these Think Car ones too, Think Car, they're made in China and they have it for different districts, so they very well could have one that works. You might look at the Think Car ones too. Sebastian Hansen says, what are your thoughts about Peugeot? I know it's French, but I haven't heard you really mention them. Okay, well, they haven't sold cars in the United States for decades, so I don't actually see them. Now, I got friends in England that like them. They buy them, and they call themselves Stellantis. Fiat and Chrysler weren't that great. I don't think Peugeot's all that great. I don't think it's going to be such a smart move. But it's like everything else. They're going for economy of scale. They figure the bigger they are, then they can make more profit by sharing certain models and cutting out models that don't sell, things that don't work, and then replacing them with a different one. Theoretically, it sounds good, but they're corporations. Generally, they're dead from the neck up, and they screw up everything they get their hands on. So we'll see what happens. But from my experience of Peugeot, the French government has been bailing them out for years and years and years. I don't see anything good happening out of it myself. Matthew Mitchell said, Scotty, how long are you in Tennessee for? Might drive to see you in my Camry. Well, wait, because tomorrow I'm going to Rhode Island. I've got 3 grandkids in Rhode Island. Strangely enough, 2 boys and a girl. I got 3 grandkids here in Tennessee, 2 boys and a girl. I'm splitting time back and forth. I won't be back here until December. Meet me then. Benny Garcia says, those big, strong hands. Well, they might be strong, but they're not big. I have totally average hands. Now, my youngest son has really big hands, and he's really good at playing the piano. He's a lot stronger than me, too. A lot bigger than me, too. He's a good 4 or 5 inches taller than me. But I've just got average size hands. They're strong enough from working on cars, yeah. But they're not that big. They're just average size, just like me. I'm just kind of average size. I used to be bigger, but I've been on a diet and I've lost some weight, so now I'm average size. Arteria says, Scotty, would you be my sugar daddy? Well, I think my wife wouldn't like that. I don't think she'd go for that. We've been married for 43 years, and I'm lucky that she stuck with me. She said when she first married me, she thought, oh, wild and crazy. Look at us, and she says, you're not wild and crazy at all. I am psychologically, you know? Mentally I am. But in my real life, no, I'm rather conservative. I'm what you would call a failed intellectual. I was writing my PhD at the University of Illinois. I never finished it, got married, went back to fixing cars, and I'm happier. And I probably make 100 times more than what a university professor made at the University of Illinois back in those days. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.